150 people watched as my own daughter blocked my path at the church doors, telling me I was surplus to requirements at my only grandson's baptism. I'm Evelyn. I'm 68 years old. I worked my entire life to give them everything, but that day I understood that to them, I am nothing but an ATM with legs. What my daughter Emily didn't know is that ATMs also have a cancel transaction button, and I was about to press it with all my might. That morning, I had risen before the sun came up. The house was silent, that vast, cold silence that settles in when a woman becomes a widow and the children leave the nest. But today, the silence didn't bother me. On the contrary, it felt full of expectation. It was the day, the baptism of Leo, my grandson, my adoration, that little piece of heaven that had arrived in our family 6 months ago. I spent an hour in front of the mirror getting ready. I had bought a gorgeous navy blue dress made of fine fabric, the kind that costs an arm and a leg, but one pays for gladly because the occasion deserves it. I combed my hair carefully, covering the rebellious gray strands, and put on the pearl necklace my late husband, Robert, gave me for our 30th anniversary. I looked in the mirror, and for the first time in a long while, I felt beautiful. I felt important. Today is a big day, Evelyn, I said aloud to encourage myself. Today, you're going to be with your family. I left the house with my heart pounding. I had hired a private town car service because I didn't want to drive and get nervous in city traffic. As the car moved through the streets, I mentally reviewed everything I had done for this event. It wasn't a small list. When Emily and her husband Jason told me they wanted to baptize the baby, they complained they didn't have the money. Jason is always involved in startups that never launch. And my daughter, well, she works, but she has champagne tastes on a beer budget. So, as always, Mama Bear came to the rescue. Don't worry, kids, I told them 2 months ago. I'll handle the venue, the catering, and the party favors. I want my grandson to have the best. I paid for the most exclusive event venue in the city, the one with immense gardens and marble fountains. I paid for a banquet for 150 people, even though initially we were only going to be 50. But Jason's guest list started growing like a weed. They're business contacts, Evelyn. He would tell me with that smile I never quite trusted. And I, like a fool, signed the checks. I even paid for the baby's christening gown, a garment of imported Irish linen that cost more than my dress. The town car dropped me off in front of St. Jude's Cathedral. There was a crowd outside luxury SUVs, people dressed in designer clothes I didn't recognize at all. I felt a pang of shyness. Who are all these people? I thought. I looked for familiar faces, a neighbor, a distant cousin, but I didn't see anyone from my side of the family. How strange. I climbed the stone steps with difficulty because my knees aren't what they used to be, leaning on my carved wooden cane. The organ music was already starting to swell inside. I was arriving just in time. When I reached the atrium, I saw my daughter. Emily looked stunning. I can't deny it, in a cream-colored dress with her hair swept up. She had baby Leo in her arms. Jason was by her side, talking animatedly with a group of men in expensive suits. I filled with pride. That was my blood. I advanced toward them with a smile from ear to ear, ready to give them a kiss and enter the house of God for the ceremony. "Emily, honey," I called out, raising my hand. She turned around. Her smile vanished in a fraction of a second. It wasn't a look of welcome, it was a look of annoyance, as if she had spotted a stain on her new dress. She whispered something to Jason, handed him the baby, and walked quickly toward me, intercepting me before I could reach the main doors. "Mom, what are you doing here?" she asked in a low, hard voice. I froze. "What do you mean? What am I doing here? It's Leo's baptism. I'm his grandmother." Emily looked around nervously, as if my presence embarrassed her in front of all these strangers. "Mom, listen, there was a logistical problem," she started, crossing her arms. "The church is small. We had to prioritize. Prioritize." I repeated the word as if it were in a foreign language. "Honey, I'm your mother. I paid for the party. I bought the gown the child is wearing. I know, Mom, and I appreciate it so much, really," she said, using that condescending tone one uses with toddlers or old people who no longer understand anything. But Jason invited his partners, very important people, influencers, politicians, people who can help us level up socially. You know how this works. I felt a knot in my stomach, a cold, tight knot. "Are you telling me I can't come in?" I asked, feeling my voice tremble. Emily sighed impatiently. "There's no room, Mom. The pews are assigned. Look, it's already packed inside. Jason's parents are there, his partners, the investors. There are no extra seats." I looked over her shoulder. The church doors were open. I saw Jason's parents sitting in the front row, looking very smug. They hadn't contributed a single cent to anything. I saw people standing in the back. There was space. "Can I stand in the back?" I pleaded. My God, I was humiliating myself, begging to watch my own grandson's baptism. "No, Mom," she cut me off sharply. "It would look bad. Besides, there's no table for you at the reception later. The tables are counted and organized by affinity. You don't know anyone. You're going to be bored. You'll feel lonely, and then you'll get a headache, and I'll have to take care of you. It's better if you go home and rest." I felt as if she had slapped me. No, a slap would have hurt less. This was a stab directly to the heart. 150 people. 150 strangers who were going to eat my food, drink my wine, and celebrate with my money, while I was kicked out like a stray dog crashing a banquet. People entering brushed past me. Some looked at me with curiosity, an old woman dressed in gala attire standing at the door with a look of horror. I heard laughter. I saw Jason in the distance. He didn't even look at me. He was busy laughing at the jokes of a man wearing a gold Rolex. In that moment, something broke inside me. But it wasn't a loud break. It was silent. It was the sound of patience snapping after years of enduring slights, of excusing forgotten birthdays, of justifying Emily's selfishness, thinking, "She's just stressed, she's young." I looked my daughter in the eyes. She expected me to cry, to make a scene, or simply to lower my head and leave submissively, as I had always done. The good old Evelyn, the grandmother who forgives everything. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of expensive perfume and hypocrisy. "Okay, honey," I said. My voice came out firm, surprisingly calm. Emily seemed relieved. She let out the breath she had been holding. "Thanks for understanding, Mom. You're an angel. I'll stop by tomorrow and tell you how everything went. We'll bring you some cake." She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, a kiss that didn't touch my skin, a kiss to the air. She turned around and entered the church. The heavy wooden doors closed, letting the first notes of Ave Maria escape. I stood there alone on the stone atrium. The midday sun hit my face, but I felt a glacial cold in my bones. My feet hurt in my new shoes. My soul hurt. I walked down the stairs slowly. I didn't cry. My eyes were dry, arid as a desert. The town car was gone, of course. I had to walk 2 blocks to a main avenue to hail a cab. During the ride back home, I didn't think about sadness. Sadness is a luxury I couldn't afford at that moment. Sadness paralyzes, and I needed to move. I started thinking in numbers. I've been a business owner all my life. I started selling pies from a basket and ended up owning 3 industrial commercial bakeries and several retail properties downtown. I was widowed, young, and built that empire alone while raising Emily. She never knew what it was to wake up at 3 a.m. to knead dough, nor what it was to fight with suppliers, nor what it was to count pennies to pay the electric bill. She only knew private schools, designer clothes, trips to the Hamptons. Perhaps that was my mistake. I gave her everything on a silver platter. I raised a useless woman with a queen's tastes. And Jason was a parasite with a college degree who had married her because he smelled the inheritance money. I arrived home. I opened the door, and the silence welcomed me again. I kicked off my shoes in the entryway and left them lying there. I went straight to my home office. It's a small room where I keep my antique desk, my computer, and my binders. I sat in the leather chair that had belonged to Robert. I looked at the clock. It was 12:30 p.m. The Mass would last an hour. Then the transfer to the venue, the Crystal Gardens. The reception was scheduled to start at 2 p.m. I had an hour and a half. I reached for my paper address book, that old black leather notebook Emily always told me to throw away because everything is on the phone. Mom. But in that notebook were the numbers that really mattered. I looked for the letter H. Henderson. Mr. Henderson. I dialed the number. It rang twice. "Hello?" answered a gravelly voice. It was Saturday, and Henderson was surely resting or eating with his family. "Mr. Henderson, it's Evelyn." There was a pause. Henderson has handled my accounts for 30 years. He knows me better than anyone. He knows that if I call him on a Saturday at this hour, it's not to say hello. Evelyn, what a pleasure. Is something wrong? I thought you'd be at your grandson's baptism. Change of plans, Arthur. I'm not at the baptism. I'm at home, and I need to make some urgent moves. Tell me, Evelyn. You're the boss. I need you to cancel the cashier's check for the venue. The big one, the final balance for the banquet. I heard silence on the other end of the line. Henderson cleared his throat. Evelyn, that check is for a very substantial amount. If I stop payment now, they're going to have serious problems at the venue. They probably won't serve the food. Exactly, Arthur. That is what I want. But Evelyn, are you sure? It's your grandson's baptism. The guests, the family. There is no family there, Arthur. There are only 150 strangers and 2 ingrates. Listen to me carefully. Cancel the check for the venue. Also cancel the payment to the event planner they hired for the decor and music. I want all the credit cards my daughter has under my account authorized user cards blocked right now. Absolutely all of them. I can do that from the banking app this instant. Anything else? Yes. Remember the commercial space on Central Avenue? The one Jason uses for his consulting firm. Yes, of course. The lease is under your name. He's just a tenant at will. I want you to prepare an eviction notice. Have it ready for Monday morning first thing. The free ride is over. If he wants an office, he can pay for it. Evelyn, this is war, Henderson said with a tone that mixed concern and, I thought, a little bit of admiration. No, Arthur, it's not war. It's education. I'm teaching them the lesson I should have taught them 20 years ago. Oh, and one more thing. Call the manager of the venue. You know him. Richard is a friend of yours. Yes, Richard. Tell him the payment will not be authorized, that the account holder, me, does not authorize the disbursement, that if they want to get paid, they should collect from the hosts, Mr. Jason and Mrs. Emily. Tell him to do it right now, before they start serving the appetizers. I'll call him immediately, Evelyn. Are you okay? I looked out the window. The sky was blue, brilliant. I took off the pearl necklace and placed it on the desk. My neck felt lighter. Better than ever, Arthur. Better than ever. Proceed. I hung up the phone. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes. I imagined the scene. I imagined the 150 guests arriving at the Crystal Gardens. I imagined the waiters standing with their arms crossed. I imagined the manager's face approaching Jason with the bill in hand. My heart, which a while ago was shriveled like a raisin, began to beat with a new rhythm, strong and steady. I got up and went to the kitchen. I made myself a coffee, strong, just how I like it. I took out some cookies from the pantry. I sat at my kitchen table, alone, but I no longer felt rejected. I felt powerful. I had spent years being the shadow provider, the old woman who signs the checks and keeps her mouth shut so as not to bother anyone. I had allowed them to disrespect me to my face, believing that was motherly love. But motherly love isn't being a doormat for people to wipe their feet on. Love is also correction. And boy, was I about to correct. My cell phone chimed. It was a WhatsApp message. I opened it. It was a photo in the family group sent by a distant cousin who didn't know I wasn't there. In the photo, Emily and Jason were toasting with champagne glasses, smiling like winners. Under the photo, it said, "What a great party. Thanks for everything." I looked at the time. 2:15 p.m. The landline phone started ringing. Then my cell phone. Emily's photo appeared on the screen. Daughter calling. I let it ring once, twice, 3, 4 times. The ringtone mixed with the aroma of fresh coffee. I didn't answer. It rang again. This time, it was Jason. I didn't answer either. Then it rang again. Emily again. I took the cell phone, put it on silent mode, and placed it face down on the table. I took a sip of my coffee. It was delicious, just the right amount of sugar. I imagined the chaos that must be unleashing at the venue. The shame, the public humiliation they wanted to avoid for me so badly, was now falling upon them multiplied by 150. "There's no room for you, Mom." Those words echoed in my head. They were right. There was no room for me in that life of appearances and falsehoods they had built. But in my life, in my reality, I was the owner of the chessboard. And I had just called checkmate. I finished my coffee calmly. went to my bedroom, took off the gala dress, and put on my favorite house robe, the soft, worn cotton one. I felt comfortable. I felt like myself. The landline kept ringing intermittently, like a desperate scream in the distance. I unplugged it from the wall. I went to my bedroom window that faces the street. I saw a neighbor walking his dog. Everything seemed normal outside, but I knew that on the other side of the city, in a luxurious ballroom, my daughter's world was crumbling. And the worst or the best part was that this was just the beginning. Tomorrow would be Sunday. Tomorrow they would come demanding explanations, shouting, or perhaps asking to borrow money to pay the debt to the venue. But tomorrow they would encounter a different Evelyn. The Evelyn who built an empire from nothing had woken up from her nap. I lay down on my bed to take a real nap. I needed to rest. Tomorrow was going to be a very busy day. I closed my eyes and, for the first time in years, I slept with a smile on my lips, knowing the silent phone in the kitchen was filling with desperate messages that I would read whenever I damn well pleased. They wanted exclusivity? Well, now they had a problem exclusively their own. I slept like I hadn't in years without pills, without tossing and turning, worried if Emily had enough for the car payment or if Jason had managed to close that phantom deal he talked so much about. I slept with the tranquility of someone who has finally dropped a heavy load that wasn't theirs to carry. When I opened my eyes, the Sunday light was entering softly through the curtains. My biological clock woke me at 6 a.m., a habit of an old baker that never goes away, even if I don't have to knead flour anymore. The house was in absolute silence, but this time it didn't feel empty. It felt clean. I got up, put on my slippers, and went straight to the kitchen. I plugged the landline back in. Almost instantly, the red light on the answering machine began to blink frantically. I had 22 new voice messages. I looked at my cell phone, still face down on the table. 53 missed calls, hundreds of WhatsApp messages. I made myself a chamomile tea with honey with all the calm in the world. I sat in my favorite armchair, adjusted my glasses, and decided it was time to assess the damage. Not with fear, but with the curiosity of a scientist observing how insects react when you take away their sugar. The first voice message was from 2:45 p.m. the previous day. It was Emily. "Mom, what's going on? The manager says the card was declined. We're in the middle of the toast. Pick up. You're making me look ridiculous." The second message at 3:10 p.m. was from Jason. His voice trembled with contained rage, that fake politeness he uses when he wants to manipulate me. "Evelyn, surely it's a bank error. Please call Henderson urgently. They're holding back the main courses. My partners are asking what's happening. This is very serious, Evelyn." By 4 p.m., the messages were no longer polite. "You are selfish. How could you do this to us? We had to pass a hat around the godparents to pay for the corkage fee. People are leaving. You've ruined my life," screamed Emily. And in the background, I could hear baby Leo crying. My poor grandson, surely absorbing all that bad energy. I listened one by one screams, tears, absurd threats to sue me, as if they could sue me for my own money. And finally, the silence of defeat near midnight. I smiled a sip of tea and a smile. But I didn't stop there. I needed to know exactly where I stood. I went to my office, that small sanctuary where I keep the papers Emily never bothered to read because she found them boring. I took out the blue binder, the property and assets binder. For years, every time they had a whim or an urgent need, I signed. But my late Robert, may he rest in peace, always taught me one thing. "Evelyn, help the family, but never leave yourself without a roof. Let the papers speak." I started reading the documents, rediscovering the power I had forgotten I held. First, the house where they live, a beautiful residence in a gated community. Emily always says, "My house, my garden." But there was the deed. The house is in my name. I let them use it under a tenancy at will agreement while the young couple's economic situation improved. That was 8 years ago. It never improved because they never had a need for it to improve. Second, Jason's car, that SUV of the year that he shows off as a symbol of his business success. I paid the down payment, and the monthly installments are automatically debited from my savings account under the concept grandchildren transport help. Third, the credit cards. I logged into online banking on my computer. I put on my glasses to see the numbers well. The extension card I gave Emily for baby emergencies. It had charges from spas, luxury clothing stores, sushi restaurants. And what is this? A golf pro shop. Jason doesn't even play golf. I felt a stab in my chest. It wasn't pain, it was shame. Shame on myself. How had I been so blind? How had I allowed them to play me for a fool like this for so long? I got up and walked to the full-length mirror in the hallway. I looked at myself. I saw a 68-year-old woman. I saw the wrinkles on my face, the map of a life of work. I saw my hands, which, although now manicured, still possessed the strength of someone who carried 50-pound flour sacks. They underestimated you, Evelyn, I told my reflection. They treated you like an old piece of furniture that spits out money. They think you're weak because you're generous, but they forgot whose blood they inherited. I remembered when Robert and I started. We had nothing. We slept on a mattress on the floor in the back room of the first bakery. When I got pregnant with Emily, I worked until the day of delivery. My water broke serving a customer, and 3 days later I was back at the cash register with Emily in a bassinet next to the oven. I built this wealth with sweat, with tears, with intelligence. I negotiated with tough suppliers who wanted to see me fail for being a woman. I survived economic recessions, market crashes, unfair competition, and now a son-in-law with delusions of grandeur and a capricious daughter were telling me there was no room for me? The rage transformed into strategy. A cold, calculating calm took over me. It was the same sensation I had before closing a big deal. My mind cleared. I went back to the desk. I took a blank sheet of paper and a pen. I started making a list. Not a shopping list, but an adjustment list. The house. They have 30 days to vacate or start paying market rent. The car. Returned tomorrow or reported stolen. Jason's consultancy. Immediate eviction from the commercial space. The inheritance. Call the notary on Monday to modify the will. Writing inheritance. I paused. It was a drastic step to cut my only daughter out, but then I remembered her eyes yesterday, that look of disdain. We prioritized important people, she told me. Well, now I was going to prioritize my dignity. The doorbell rang. It wasn't a normal ring. It was a long, insistent buzz, followed by heavy pounding on the door. "Mom, open up! We know you're there!" It was Emily's voice. I checked the clock. 11 a.m. They had taken longer than I thought. Surely they overslept from the hangover or fighting among themselves. I didn't rush. I closed my document binder calmly, smoothed my robe, went to the kitchen, put the kettle back on the fire, and only then walked to the entrance. I opened the door. There they were. Emily had swollen eyes. Yesterday's mascara was still smudged on her cheeks. Jason was behind her, clothes wrinkled, unshaven, looking like a rabid dog. They didn't bring the baby. "Do you have any idea what went through your head?" Emily screamed before entering, pushing the door open. "You humiliated us. We had to leave Jason's watch as collateral, the watch his parents gave him." "Good morning to you too, daughter," I said, with a soft voice that contrasted with her screaming. I stepped aside to let them pass. "Come in. The tea is almost ready." They entered like a whirlwind, filling my house with their chaotic, demanding energy. They went straight to the living room. Jason threw himself onto the sofa, putting his feet, shoes, and all on the coffee table, as he always did. "Feet down, Jason," I said. He looked at me, surprised. "What?" "Take your feet off my table. It's mahogany. It scratches." Jason let out a nervous, incredulous laugh. But he lowered his feet slowly, looking at me as if I had grown a second head. Emily was pacing from one side to the other, waving her hands. "Mom, don't change the subject. You have to fix this. Richard, the venue guy, gave us until tomorrow, Monday at noon, to pay the full amount or he sues. It's almost $10,000, Mom. 10,000. You have to wire us the money right now, and you're going to have to pay extra for the moral damages you caused us with the guests." I sat in my armchair, crossed my legs, and looked at them. They really believed this was a tantrum of mine. They believed I was hurt, that I would cry, that they would yell a bit, and then I would take out the checkbook to buy their forgiveness. "I'm not paying anything, Emily," I said. The silence that followed was absolute. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. "What do you mean you're not going to pay?" Jason asked, leaning forward with that aggressive tone he uses when he thinks he's in control. "Evelyn, let's be reasonable. You committed. There is a verbal contract." "The contract was for my grandson's baptism," I replied, staring him straight in the eyes. a family event. But yesterday you made it very clear that it wasn't a family event. It was a business meeting and a social climbing exercise. And I don't finance anyone's businesses, Jason, much less yours, which never turn a profit. Jason turned red as a tomato. He stood up abruptly. Watch what you say, Evelyn. You don't know anything about modern business. My contacts are high level. Your contacts are parasites in expensive suits. Just like you, I let out. The phrase came out sharp, precise, lethal. Emily let out a strangled cry. Mom, don't talk to my husband like that. You're senile, that's what it is. You're going crazy with age. Could be, I said, shrugging. They say age brings wisdom, but sometimes it brings clarity. And yesterday at the door of that church, I saw everything very clearly. I was told there was no room for me, that I was extra, that my presence wasn't aesthetic enough for your Instagram photos. Mom, it wasn't like that. Emily tried to soften, seeing that the attack tactic wasn't working. She instantly switched to the victim role. We just wanted everything to be perfect. Understand us. We are under so much pressure. I understand perfectly, honey. You wanted the perfect party with the imperfect mother's money. You wanted the luxury, but without the old woman who pays for it. Well, wish granted. The old woman left, and her money went with her. I stood up. I went to the desk and brought the blue binder. I dropped it on the coffee table. The dry thud echoed in the room. What is this? Emily asked, eyeing the binder with suspicion. That is reality, Emily. Your reality. I opened the binder and took out the first document. This is the deed to the house where you live. As you know, it's mine. Tomorrow, Monday, my lawyer will start the process to terminate the tenancy. You have 1 month to vacate or sign a lease agreement. The rent will be $3,500 a month, which is the market price in that area. Emily went pale. She had to grab the back of the sofa to keep from falling. Are you kicking us out onto the street with a baby? He's your grandson. I'm not kicking you out. You have a roof. It's just that now you'll have to pay for it like any responsible adult. And regarding my grandson, don't worry. If you two can't afford a roof for him, I will gladly petition for temporary custody so he lacks nothing. Because I do love him, I do protect him. But for you two, recess is over. Jason was shaking no longer from anger, but from pure fear. He knew that without my house and without my money, his house of cards would collapse in 2 seconds. Evelyn, please. We can't pay that rent. You know my projects are maturing. I need time. You're out of time, Jason. You had 8 years. And by the way, I pulled out another paper. I need the keys to the SUV. Now. That's my car, he shouted. No, Jason, read the papers. It's my car. I bought it. I pay the insurance. I pay the taxes. You just drive it. And seeing that you like to leave your mother-in-law on the street, I think walking will be good for you. It's good for health and for humility. I extended my hand, palm open, waiting. The keys. Jason looked at Emily. Emily was looking at the floor, crying silently. But it wasn't a cry of repentance, it was a cry of impotence. She realized the golden goose hadn't just stopped laying eggs, she had turned into an eagle and was clawing their eyes out. I'm not giving you anything, Jason shouted in a last attempt at wounded machismo. This is theft. I'm calling the police. Go ahead, I said, pointing to the phone. Call them. I have all the invoices in my name. I have the titles. When the police arrive, the only thing they're going to see is a grown man trying to appropriate an elderly woman's assets. Who do you think is going to lose, Jason? Jason clenched his fists. His face deformed into a grimace of hate. For a second, I was afraid. He was a young, strong man, and I am an older woman. He took a step toward me. You're a damn old witch, he whispered through his teeth. In that moment, my survival instinct, the one I developed in the markets fighting off thieves and scammers, activated. I didn't back down. I straightened to my full height, raised my chin, and looked at him with a coldness that froze the blood. I dare you, I told him in a low voice. I dare you to touch a hair on my head, Jason, and I swear by my husband's memory that I won't just take the house and the car. I will put you in prison and ensure you never see the light of day in this city again. I have the money and the lawyers to do it. Try me. We stood like that, looking into each other's eyes in a silent duel. He was breathing heavily. I didn't blink. Finally, Jason lowered his gaze. He reached into his pocket, took out the key fob for the SUV, and threw it furiously on the floor at my feet. "Keep your junk," he spat. "Pick them up," I said. "What?" "Pick up the keys and place them in my hand. I am not your maid to be picking up your messes. In my house, there is respect." Jason looked at the keys on the floor. He looked at Emily, waiting for her to defend him, but Emily was curled up on the sofa, defeated. Slowly, with a humiliation that burned his ears, Jason crouched down, his knees cracked. He picked up the keys and placed them in my hand roughly. "Get out of here," I said, closing my fist over the cold metal keys. "And don't come back until you have a serious proposal on how you're going to pay me everything you owe. Oh, and Emily, next Sunday is my birthday. Don't bother coming. I'll be busy celebrating with people who actually love me." Jason grabbed Emily by the arm, almost dragging her, and they left the house, slamming the door so hard the pictures on the walls shook. I was left alone again in the hallway. My legs, which had been firm as oaks, began to tremble a little from the adrenaline. I had to sit on the chair in the foyer. I looked at the car keys in my hand. I looked at the blue binder on the table. It had begun. There was no turning back. I had declared war on my own daughter, my own blood. It hurt. Of course it hurt. I felt a tear run down my cheek, but at the same time, I felt fresh air entering my lungs. For the first time in years, I had control. But I knew this wouldn't stay like this. Jason was vengeful and stupid, a dangerous combination. And Emily was desperate to maintain her social status. They would try something. Surely they would try to manipulate me with the child, or perhaps they would try to incapacitate me legally, alleging dementia. I needed to armor myself. I needed an army. I took my cell phone and looked through my old contacts. I looked for the number of the Lionesses. That's what we called my group of retired businesswomen friends, women who, like me, had built empires and whom society had discarded as old. I hadn't seen them in years because Emily said they were a bad influence and unsophisticated. I dialed Teresa's number, the former owner of the largest hardware chain in the state. "Teresa, it's Evelyn. Evelyn the baker. Yes, I'm alive. Listen, I need to get the group together. Yes, everyone. I have a plan, and I'm going to need your help. We're going to teach the world a lesson, and while we're at it, I'm going to take back my life. Meet me at the coffee shop downtown in an hour." I hung up. I wiped the single tear I allowed myself to shed. I got up and went to my room to get dressed. No robe. I put on an impeccable tailored suit. I painted my lips a deep red and put on my best heels. Grandma Sweetie had gone on vacation. The boss was back. And as I left the house to meet my new war counsel, I didn't know that Jason was already calling an unscrupulous lawyer to try and declare me mentally incompetent. The war was just beginning, and they were going to play dirty. What they didn't know is that I invented the game. The Viceroy Cafe is one of those places downtown that smells of history, varnished wood, and freshly ground beans. It's a place where time seems to stop, but where more important deals have been closed than in any modern skyscraper. I walked in that Sunday morning, my heels clicking on the checkered marble floor. I saw they were already waiting for me. They occupied the back table, the most private one, under an old oil painting of the city's founding. They were my lionesses, Teresa, matriarch of hardware, with her white hair cut in a bob and that hawk's gaze that misses nothing. Martha, a retired judge, feared for her iron rectitude. And Sophia, widow of a diplomat, who knows the secrets of every wealthy family better than the parish priest. "You're late, Evelyn," Teresa said, checking her wristwatch, but with a warm smile. "We already ordered your cappuccino with cinnamon." I sat down, leaving my purse on the table with a sigh that carried the weight of the last 24 hours. "I had to deal with the trash before leaving," I said, referring to Jason and Emily's visit. "We imagined," Martha intervened, adjusting her glasses. "Gossip travels fast, darling. Sophia told me that yesterday at the Crystal Gardens there was a spectacle worthy of a soap opera when the waiters stopped serving the wine. They say Jason was red as a lobster, screaming at the manager." Sophia nodded with that innate elegance she has, even when delivering bad news. "My sources say it was disastrous, Evelyn. People were whispering. They said Jason's card bounced 3 times. Some guests left to eat burgers at the corner joint because they were hungry. It was vulgar. I felt a mix of satisfaction and pain. Pain because, at the end of the day, she carries my last name. Satisfaction because the lesson had begun. I'm not here to talk about gossip. Girls, I said, taking a sip of coffee to clear my throat. I'm here to talk about war. I need to armor myself. Jason threatened me. He insinuated I'm crazy, that I'm senile. The table fell silent. Martha, the judge, leaned forward. Her expression changed from friend to strategist. The mental incapacity card, Martha said with a grave voice. It's the classic play of parasitic children when the faucet is turned off. They will try to find a corrupt doctor to sign a diagnosis of dementia or early Alzheimer's to petition for a court-ordered conservatorship. If they succeed, Jason would become your legal guardian. He would control your accounts, your properties, and even your freedom. A chill ran down my spine. I imagined Jason controlling my life, locking me in a cheap nursing home while he spent my fortune on his projects. I won't allow it, I said firmly. Of course not, Teresa replied, tapping the table gently with her ring-laden hand. Evelyn, you built 3 industrial bakeries while breastfeeding. You are the sanest woman we know. Martha, I said, I need you to handle my preventive defense. I'm already on it mentally, the judge replied. Tomorrow, Monday at first light, we will go see Dr. Evans. He is the most respected forensic psychiatrist in the courts. We are going to do a complete voluntary evaluation. We will certify before a notary that you are in full possession of your mental faculties. With that paper in hand, any attempt by Jason to declare you insane will bounce back on him as a defamation lawsuit. And I, Sophia intervened, will handle the social part. Jason thinks his contacts will save him. Poor delusional fool. Those contacts are friends of the money, not of him. I'm going to make a few subtle calls by Tuesday. No one at the club will answer his phone calls. He's going to become a social pariah. Thank you, I told them, feeling tears prick my eyes. This was loyalty. This was chosen family. We spent the next 2 hours mapping out the plan. It wasn't a chat between friends. It was a board meeting. We reviewed assets, analyzed legal weaknesses, prepared contingencies. When I left the cafe, I no longer felt like a lonely victim. I felt like a general with her general staff. Monday dawned cloudy, gray, and heavy, as if the city knew a storm was coming. I was standing in front of the mirror at 7 a.m. Charcoal gray suit, white silk blouse, pearls. No sweet grandma. Today was Evelyn, the CEO. My first stop was Dr. Evans' office. Martha accompanied me. It was a long, tedious exam. Memory questions, logic, math, analysis of my emotional state. In the end, the doctor, a gray-haired and serious man, signed the certificate with a flourish. Miss Evelyn, you have a mind more agile than many of my 40-year-old patients, he said, smiling. You are lucid, oriented, and possess superior cognitive capacity. Anyone who says otherwise is lying. I left there with the document in my purse as if it were a diamond shield. Meanwhile, the silent execution began to take effect on other fronts. At 9:30 a.m., my phone vibrated. It was a notification from the security company that monitors the commercial space on Central Avenue, Jason's famous office. Report. Attempted entry with unauthorized key. Smart lock activated. I smiled. I had ordered the access codes and physical locks changed on Sunday night with an emergency locksmith. I imagined the scene. Jason arriving with his briefcase, trying to open the glass door in front of his secretary and perhaps an early client, and finding that his key no longer turned. I decided I didn't want to imagine it. I wanted to see it, or at least see the consequences. I asked the taxi to take me to Central Avenue. I got out on the sidewalk across the street at a coffee shop with large windows. I ordered a tea and sat down to watch. There he was. Jason was pounding on the glass door. He was talking on his cell phone, gesturing furiously. His secretary, a young girl who always looked at me with pity when I visited, was standing next to him with a cardboard box, visibly ashamed. I saw 2 men in suits arrive. They were clients. Jason turned to them with that fake smile he does so well, trying to explain why they couldn't enter his own office. He pointed at the door, made gestures of a technical problem. In that moment, I saw a police cruiser arrive. My heart skipped a beat. Jason had called them. How stupid. I saw the officers approach. Jason started shouting at them, pointing at the door, demanding they open it. The officers, calm, asked for ID. Jason took out his wallet. The officers checked something on a tablet. Then, one of the police officers shook his head. He handed Jason a paper. It was the restraining order and eviction, notice that Martha had drafted and sent with a process server that same morning, much earlier than Jason expected. Jason read the paper. I saw his shoulders slump. The clients in suits exchanged glances, turned around, and walked away, leaving Jason talking alone with the police. The secretary handed the keys she had to Jason, said something I couldn't hear, and walked toward the bus stop, leaving him alone in front of the locked door of his businessman fantasy. I drank my tea. At noon, I went to the bank, not just any branch, but the headquarters where I hold my corporate accounts. Miss Evelyn, what an honor. The regional manager, Mr. Pineda, came out personally to receive me. He knew I moved a lot of money. How can we serve you? Coffee? Water? Water is fine, Pineda. I need to make some changes to the authorized signatures on the bakery accounts and my personal accounts. Of course. Let's go to my office. While I was signing the revocation of the powers of attorney I had given Emily years ago just in case something happened to me, my cell phone started ringing. It was Emily. I let it ring. It rang again and again. On the fourth time, I answered. I put it on speaker to keep my hands free to sign. Mom! Mom, this is a nightmare! Emily was crying. A hysterical cry. I'm at Whole Foods with a cart full of diapers and food. The card isn't working. It says insufficient funds or blocked. People in line are staring at me. I'm sorry, Emily, I said with a calm voice as I signed another document Pineda passed to me. The additional cards were canceled on Saturday. I told you. But I need diapers for Leo, she screamed. I don't have cash. Jason isn't answering. Mom, please don't do this to me here. I'm so embarrassed. I felt a pang of pain. It was my daughter suffering public shame. My maternal instinct screamed, help her! But then I remembered my own shame on Saturday. I remembered, there's no room for you. I remembered that she allowed her mother to be expelled like a beggar. If I caved now, everything would have been in vain. She needed to feel the weight of real life. The life where, if you don't have money, you don't buy. Emily, you are 35 years old, I told her. If you don't have money to pay, you'll have to leave the things and go home, or call your husband to solve it. He's the man of the house, right? The big businessman. Mom, you're a monster, she shrieked. Jason is right. You're crazy. We're going to. I hung up. My hands trembled slightly over the paper. Mr. Pineda looked at me with discretion, pretending not to have heard, but I saw respect in his eyes. He had seen many parents ruined by spoiled children. Everything okay, Miss Evelyn? He asked softly. Everything is excellent, Pineda. Just pruning the family tree. Sometimes you have to cut branches so the trunk doesn't rot. I left the bank feeling lighter, but also hardened. The indirect confrontation was working. Chaos reigned in their lives because I had withdrawn my protective hand. I returned home around 4 p.m. I felt emotionally exhausted. I took off my shoes and sat in the living room. It was then that I heard the screech of a car braking hard outside. Then loud bangs on the door, not the doorbell punches. Evelyn, open this door. It was Jason's voice, but he didn't just sound angry. He sounded desperate and drunk. I approached the window without being seen. I saw that Jason wasn't alone. There was another man with him, a guy in a white coat with a briefcase, and two large orderlies dressed in blue scrubs. A private ambulance was parked behind the SUV. Jason had recovered using the spare key I didn't know he had. My mistake. We know you're in there, Jason shouted. I brought the doctor. We're going to take you to rest, Evelyn. It's for your own good. You're having a psychotic episode. My heart accelerated. They were trying it. They were attempting a medical coup. They wanted to take me by force, sedate me, and lock me up to take control before the lawyers made tomorrow's changes effective. It was a dirty, vile, desperate move. If they managed to inject me with something, if they managed to take me to a clinic of their choice, they could keep me drugged for weeks until they got a judge's signature. The banging on the door got louder. Miss Evelyn, shouted the man in the white coat. I am Dr. Varela. Your son-in-law called us very concerned. Please open up. We don't want to have to force entry for a medical emergency. Medical emergency. That was the legal excuse to break down the door. I ran to my office. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear thanks to the talk with the lionesses. I dialed Martha's number. Martha, they're here. Jason brought an ambulance and thugs. They want to come in by force. Don't open. Martha shouted. "I'm calling the police and I'm on my way. Record everything. Don't let them touch you." I hung up and activated the camera on my cell phone. I approached the door, but I didn't open it. Crack. I heard the sound of wood splintering. Jason was kicking the door. "She's out of her mind," Jason yelled to the orderlies. "She's dangerous. You have to restrain her as soon as we get in." I backed into the hallway. I was scared, real physical fear. It was 3 young, strong men against a 68-year-old woman. The door gave way with a crash, flying open and hitting the wall. Jason entered first, eyes bloodshot, smelling of cheap whiskey. Behind him, the supposed doctor and the 2 orderlies. "There she is," Jason pointed, panting. "Look at her, she's hallucinating. Grab her." The orderlies advanced toward me. "Stop right there!" I screamed with all the lung capacity I had, raising the phone to record them. "This is home invasion. I am streaming live." The doctor hesitated for a second, instinctively covering his face from the camera, but Jason pushed him. "Do your job, idiot. She's crazy." One of the orderlies lunged at me. I felt his large, rough hands grabbing my arms. The pain was sharp in my old joints. "Let me go!" I screamed, struggling. "Relax, Grandma. Just a little prick to help you sleep," said the orderly with a mocking voice as the other pulled out a syringe. I felt trapped. Panic threatened to cloud my vision. They were going to sedate me. I was going to lose. "Jason!" I yelled, looking him in the eyes over the orderly's shoulder. "If you do this, there will be no forgiveness. You will rot in jail." Jason smiled. A twisted, cruel smile. "You're the one who's going to rot, Evelyn, in the loony bin, and I'm going to take very good care of your money." The needle approached my arm. In that instant, sirens were heard. Not one, but several, and very close. The sharp, piercing sound of police cruisers filled the street and entered through the broken door. The orderlies froze. The doctor went pale and quickly shoved the syringe into his pocket. "What is that?" asked the doctor nervously. "Keep going, finish!" shouted Jason desperately. "We almost have her." "Police!" A voice amplified by a megaphone resonated from the street. "Come out with your hands up. We have the house surrounded." Jason ran to the window, his face transformed. From malicious triumph, it went to absolute terror. I took advantage of the distraction. With strength I didn't know I had, I bit the hand of the orderly holding me. He yelled and let go. I ran to my office and locked myself in, sliding the deadbolt. I heard shouting outside. I heard boots entering the house. I heard Martha's voice shouting legal orders. "Detain that man. Attempted kidnapping, assault, destruction of property." I slid down to the floor, resting my back against the closed door of my office. My heart was beating so hard my chest hurt. It had been close, too close. But as I heard them handcuffing Jason in my own living room, as I heard him screaming that it was a mistake, I knew the silent execution was over. The silence had broken. Now came the noise, and the noise was going to be deafening. I took Dr. Evans' certificate out of my purse and hugged it against my chest. That paper was my life preserver. Jason wanted war. Jason wanted to demonstrate power. Well, now he was going to meet true power, not the power of brute force, but the power of the law and of a mother who has decided to stop being a victim and become the executioner. I got up, smoothed my suit, wiped the sweat from my forehead, and opened my office door to watch them take my son-in-law away in handcuffs. It was time for the final revelation. The sound of handcuffs ratcheting closed on someone's wrists is a metallic, dry, definitive sound. Click, click. I never thought I would hear that sound in my own living room, much less that the recipient would be the father of my grandson. But there was Jason, face pressed against the hardwood floor he had soiled with his muddy shoes and arrogance, while a police officer read him his rights in a monotone voice that contrasted with my son-in-law's hysterical screams. "This is a mistake. Let me go. I'm a respectable businessman. That old woman is crazy, I tell you. She attacked me," bellowed Jason, writhing like a worm on a hook. Martha, my friend and lawyer, entered the room like a general entering conquered territory. She stepped over the splinters of my shattered door without even looking down. She adjusted her glasses and pointed at the fake doctor cornered against the wall, guarded by another officer. "Officer," Martha said with that iron voice that made prosecutors tremble in her days as a judge, "make sure to fully identify that subject in the white coat. I have strong suspicions it is Dr. Varela, known for issuing controlled prescriptions in exchange for bribes. If it is him, we just uncovered a medical influence peddling ring, and those two gorillas dressed as orderlies? Check them well. I bet my pension they have records for assault. I was standing in the doorway of my office, phone still in hand, recording. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The fear had evaporated, replaced by a cold, almost surgical clarity. Seeing Jason like that, humiliated, defeated, snot running down his nose, suit wrinkled, didn't give me joy. I'm not a sadist. It gave me deep sadness. Sadness for my daughter who chose this jerk. Sadness for my grandson who would carry this last name. But above all, I felt immense relief. The monster that had intimidated me, made me feel small and old, was nothing more than a schoolyard bully crumbling at the first sign of real authority. Miss Evelyn, the sergeant in charge, approached me, an older man with a mustache who looked at me with respect. "Are you all right? Do you need medical assistance?" "I am perfectly fine, Sergeant," I replied, smoothing the jacket of my suit, just a bit shaken by the violence with which they entered my home. "We're going to need you to come to the station to formalize the complaint. We have the videos, the witnesses, and we caught them in the act. This is breaking and entering, damages, attempted kidnapping, and assault. Counting that bruise on your arm, this man is going away for a good while." Jason lifted his head from the floor upon hearing that. "Emily! Call Emily!" he shouted. "Tell her her mother set a trap for me." They dragged him out. As he passed me, he tried to look at me with hate, but I kept my head high. I didn't lower my eyes. When the house was empty, if you can call a house full of police taking photos of the broken door and bagging the syringe, the orderly dropped empty, I sat on the sofa. Martha sat next to me and took my hand. Her hand was warm. "You did well, Evelyn. Very well. That video you recorded is pure gold. It clearly shows him giving the order to sedate you. That is premeditation." "What happens now, Martha?" I asked. "Now we go to the station, and prepare yourself, because the emotional storm is just starting. Emily is going to show up, and she's coming with everything." The police station smelled of stale coffee, cheap disinfectant, and human desperation. They sat me in a private office, courtesy of Martha's influence, so I wouldn't have to wait in the common area. I was finishing signing my statement when I heard screams outside. "Where is my husband? I want to see my husband, and I want to see my mother. Mom! Mom!" It was Emily. The sergeant opened the door. Emily entered like a hurricane. She had the baby in her arms, wrapped in a blanket, and looked disheveled, with red, swollen eyes. Seeing me sitting there calmly with my lawyer and my cup of tea, she stopped dead. There was a moment of silence. She looked at Martha, then she looked at me. "Mom," her voice broke, "what did you do? Jason says you put him in jail. He says you set him up." "Sit down, Emily," I said softly, pointing to an empty chair. "I don't want to sit down," she screamed, clutching the baby to her chest. Leo started to cry. "I want you to drop the charges right now. He is the father of your grandson. How can you be so cruel? They were just trying to help you. They thought you were unwell." Martha stood up slowly, imposing. "Mrs. Emily," she said with a calm but authoritative voice, "I suggest you measure your words. Your husband did not attempt to help. Your husband hired a disbarred doctor and 2 thugs to break into a private home, drug the owner, and kidnap her to force a legal incapacity. That is called a felony. And we have proof, video, audio, and witnesses." Emily opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She looked at Martha with fear. She knew who Martha was. "Mom." Emily turned to me, changing her tone from accusation to pleading, that manipulation that had always worked for her. "Please." Jason was desperate. "You pressured him so much with the house and the car. He felt cornered. You know, he's impulsive. But he's not bad. Do it for Leo. Look at your grandson. Do you want him to grow up with his father in prison?" I looked at my grandson. That innocent face, red from crying, broke my soul. But then I looked at my daughter. I saw a 35-year-old woman still behaving like a spoiled child, justifying violence, justifying abuse, just to not lose her status, her comfort. I got up and walked toward her. Emily thought I was going to hug her, that I was going to cave. She took a step forward, but I stopped a yard away. "Emily, look at me," I told her. She looked up. On Saturday, you told me there was no room for me, that I was extra. Today, Jason tried to erase me from the map, lock me in a madhouse to keep my money. And you come here asking me to forgive him? Do you realize what you are asking? You are asking me to forgive my own executioner. But Mom, it's family. Family doesn't drug you to rob you, Emily. Family protects you. I am protecting this family. I am protecting you, even if you are too blind to see it. That man was going to leave you in ruins the moment he had control of my accounts. I reached into my purse and took out a thick manila envelope. What is that? She asked, wiping tears with the back of her free hand. This, my daughter, is reality, the full revelation. I handed her the envelope. She took it with trembling hands. Since she held the baby, she had to put the envelope on the table to open it. Open it, I ordered. Emily took out the documents. The first was Dr. Evans' psychiatric certificate dated that same morning, stamped and notarized, full mental faculties, IQ superior to average. No signs of cognitive deterioration, she read in a low voice. She looked up, pale. You knew? You knew they were going to try this? Of course I knew. I know you, Emily, and I know Jason's greed. I prepared. While you were crying over a failed party, I was armoring my life. And what is this? She pointed to the second document. That is a copy of the modification to my will. I signed it 2 hours ago, before coming here. Emily read the header, and her eyes went wide. She let out a gasp of disbelief. You disinherited me? She whispered, choked by shock. Your only daughter? I didn't disinherit you completely, I corrected, but I removed your control. Read carefully. All my assets, the bakeries, the real estate, the investments pass into a trust, an irrevocable trust. Emily read frantically. Principal beneficiary, Leo, she read. Trust administrator, an external board. She looked up, horrified. Mom, this means we won't see a cent. Jason was counting on that inheritance to pay his gambling debts. Bingo. The word slipped out. Gambling debts? I asked, arching an eyebrow. Martha took out a notepad and wrote something down quickly. Emily covered her mouth, realizing her mistake. No, I didn't mean that. Debts from risky investments. Don't lie to me anymore, Emily. It's over. My voice resonated in the small office. I know about the investments. I know the Central Avenue office was a front. I know Jason owes money to dangerous people. That's why he was so desperate to declare me crazy and take control of my accounts. It wasn't for the party, Emily. It was to save his own skin. And you knew, or suspected, and preferred to look the other way to keep playing the grand dame. Emily collapsed into the chair, sobbing openly, out of strength to fight. I'm scared, Mom, she confessed, reverting to that little girl who came to my bed during thunderstorms. We owe a lot of money. If Jason stays in jail, those people will come for us. They'll come for the house. They won't come for the house, I said firmly, because the house is mine, and tomorrow I am putting private security at the door. You and Leo will be safe there if you decide to stop defending that criminal and start acting like a mother. But what about Jason? Jason stays where he is. It is the safest place for him right now. In prison, his creditors can't touch him so easily. You should thank me. I just saved his life. Emily looked at me with a mix of terror and awe. She had never seen me like this. She had never seen the strategist Evelyn, the Evelyn who could play chess with people's lives. She had always seen the endless provider, a bit foolish. I don't recognize you, she murmured. That has been your mistake all your life, daughter. You never bothered to get to know me. You only saw what served you. But this is me. This is the woman who fed you, and this is the woman who is going to save your son from ruin, even if I have to walk over you to do it. At that moment, the door opened, and a young lawyer entered, sweating, with a cheap briefcase. It was the public defender, or maybe a college buddy of Jason's. Ma'am, I am here to represent Mr. Jason. We want to negotiate. Martha stepped in his path before he could take 2 steps. There is nothing to negotiate here, counselor. We have all the aces. If you want advice from a former judge, tell your client to plead guilty and seek a plea deal for a reduced sentence. Because if we go to trial with the evidence we have, he's getting 10 years for aggravated attempted kidnapping. The cheap lawyer looked at Emily, looked at Martha, looked at me. He saw no cracks. He saw a concrete wall. He sighed and nodded. When he left, silence returned to the room. But it wasn't a tense silence anymore. It was the silence after the battle. I approached Emily and put a hand on her shoulder. She tensed, but didn't pull away. "Daughter," I said, "you have two options. You can keep crying for a husband who was dragging you into the abyss, or you can get up, wipe those tears, and start learning how to run a real business. Because the trust says you will receive a dignified monthly allowance. Yes, but if you want more, you will have to work." "Work?" Emily looked confused. "But I have my lifestyle blog. I mean work for real, Emily. In the bakery. Starting tomorrow at 6 a.m. in administration. You are going to learn where the money you like to spend comes from." "At 6? "But the baby. I will hire a trusted nanny. I will pay for her. You will show up to work. Is that clear? Or do you handle your debts and your jailed husband alone? You decide." Emily looked down at Leo, who had fallen asleep in her arms, oblivious to the drama. She caressed the baby's little head. She knew she had no choice. She knew I had total control. Her fantasy world had broken, and I was offering the only real-life raft, even if it was made of hard work and discipline. "Okay, Mom," she whispered. "I'll be there." I left the police station feeling the fresh night air on my face. Martha walked beside me, satisfied. "Brilliant, Evelyn. Simply brilliant. You checkmated the king and turned the queen into a pawn in a single move." "I didn't want to do it, Martha. I swear I didn't. But sometimes, to save the leg, you have to cut out the gangrene." We got into the taxi. As the car pulled away, I looked out the back window. Emily remained at the station entrance, alone, small under the neon lights, waiting for a cab. She no longer looked like the haughty woman who closed the church door on me. She looked like a woman who had just woken up from a long, deep coma. Jason was locked up. My assets were protected. My daughter, for the first time in her life, was going to have to earn her bread. I took out my cell phone. I had hundreds of notifications. The news of the arrest in the gated community was already in the neighborhood chats. "Scandal at Miss Evelyn's house," they said. Police saw dragging the son-in-law away. Far from feeling shame, I felt pride. Let them talk. Let them know that you don't play with Evelyn the baker. "Where to, Miss Evelyn?" asked the driver. I checked the time. 9 p.m. It had been the longest day of my life. "Take me to dinner, Martha," I told my friend. "I have a ravenous hunger, and I want to toast." "To victory?" she asked. "No, to the future. Because for the first time in a long time, my grandson's future doesn't depend on luck. It depends on me." The taxi accelerated, losing itself in the city lights. I closed my eyes and, amidst the exhaustion, I smiled. I had recovered my place not at the baptism party where I wasn't wanted, but at the head of the table of life, where I should have always been. But I knew the final chapter wasn't written yet. Jason wouldn't stay quiet forever, and Emily would have to prove if she really had my blood or if she was a lost cause. Tomorrow at 6 a.m., the true test would begin, the complete transformation. They say bread, to be good, needs 3 fundamental things: strong flour, live yeast, and above all, time. A lot of time and patience to rise, for the dough to grow and mature before entering the fire. If you rush it, it comes out hard, inedible. With children, it's the same, although sometimes, as happened with Emily, you have to knead again when you thought the work was finished. The Tuesday following Jason's arrest, my alarm rang at 4:30 a.m. It's an hour when the city still sleeps, but where bakers like me are already up, smelling the cold air, knowing the day waits for no one. I dressed in my white uniform, the one I had stopped wearing years ago to become Madam Administrator. I put on my hairnet, my non-slip orthopedic shoes, and went down to the kitchen. I didn't drink coffee. Anxiety closed my stomach. Would she come? I had been very clear with Emily. At 6 at the production plant. If you arrive 1 minute late, you don't get in. I arrived at the main bakery at 5:15. The smell of fermented yeast and vanilla welcomed me like an old hug. I greeted Big Mike, my head baker, a man who has been with me for 30 years and has arms burned by the trade and a heart of gold. "Morning, Miss Evelyn," he said, surprised to see me with the apron on. "Something happen? We short on staff?" "No, Mike. I replied, tying the apron strings. Today a new employee starts, an apprentice, and I want to supervise her myself. At 5:55 a.m., I stood by the time clock at the staff entrance. Employees were arriving, punching their cards, greeting me with respect and curiosity. 5:58. Nothing. 5:59. Nothing. I felt a pang of disappointment. She's not coming, I thought. She's too proud. She prefers to sink than to dirty her hands. And then, just as the second hand on the wall clock was about to hit 6 sharp, I saw her. Emily got out of a taxi at the door. She wasn't wearing her stilettos or designer dresses. She was wearing old jeans, a simple white t-shirt, and sneakers. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her face was washed, without a drop of makeup. She looked pale, with deep dark circles, as if she hadn't slept all night. She ran toward the door, entered, panting, looked at the clock, 6 hours and 30 seconds, and looked at me. I had my arms crossed, standing like a sentinel. "You're 30 seconds late," I said dryly. Emily swallowed hard. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. The taxi was late, and Leo was fussy with the nanny. She started to excuse herself. I raised a hand to stop her. "The dough doesn't care about your excuses, Emily. If the bread doesn't enter the oven on time, it spoils. If the delivery truck doesn't leave at 7, the clients don't eat breakfast. Here, you aren't the owner's daughter. Here you are the cleaning and packaging assistant, and your shift already started. Punch your card and go with Big Mike. He'll tell you what to sweep." Emily stood still for a moment, processing the humiliation. I saw the battle in her eyes. Part of her wanted to turn around, scream at me, and leave. But the other part, the part that had seen her husband handcuffed and her accounts at 0, knew that door was her only lifeline. She lowered her head. "Yes, ma'am," she murmured. She punched her card. Clack-thud. The mechanical sound marked the beginning of her new life. The first few weeks were hell. I won't lie. It was hell for her, and in a way, also for me. It hurt to see her sweeping flour from the floor, hurt to see her carrying heavy boxes, see her nails break, see her reach the end of the shift with her back bent and feet swollen. The employees murmured, "Isn't that the boss's daughter? The one who married the rich guy?" "Here we are all equal," I told them. "Work dignifies, and she lacks a lot of dignity." Emily cried in the bathrooms. I heard her sobbing during her breaks, but to my surprise, she always came back out. She dried her face, put on her hairnet, and kept bagging bagels. At first, she did it with rage, throwing the bags, huffing, but little by little, the routine of physical work began to work its magic. Real tiredness, body tiredness, cleans the mind. When your muscles ache from work, you don't have energy to invent dramas or worry about what your friends at the club will say. A month later, the first real change occurred. It was a Friday of high production. One of the industrial mixers jammed. The technician would take hours to arrive. We had an urgent order for a hospital, and we were stalled. Big Mike was desperate, trying to fix it by hitting it. I was in the office reviewing invoices. Suddenly, I saw Emily approach the machine. She, who supposedly knew how to do nothing useful. "It's the digital sensor," Emily said, looking at the control panel. "It's not mechanical, Mike. It's the software. It locked up." "Move, girl, don't get in the way," Mike grunted. "Let me see," she insisted with an authority I had never heard. Not the authority of a spoiled child, but of someone who wants to solve a problem. "I've seen how it works. The manual is online." Emily crouched down, opened the side panel, took out her cell phone, looked something up quickly, and started pressing a sequence of buttons on the touchscreen. "Reset system. Calibrate," she murmured. A few seconds later, the machine emitted a beep, and the motor roared back to life, spinning the blades with power. Silence fell over the plant. Big Mike looked at her with his mouth open. The other bakers stopped working. Emily stood up, brushed the flour off her knees, and smiled. It was a shy, fleeting, but genuine smile. "Ready," she said. "You can keep going." "Bravo, kid," shouted Big Mike and slapped her on the back so hard he almost knocked her over. "You saved our hides." I saw my daughter blush not from shame, but from pride. For the first time in her life, she had been useful. For the first time, she received applause not for how she looked or what she had, but for what she had done. From my window in the second-floor office, I felt my heart expand. The yeast was starting to work. While Emily wrestled with flour, Jason's legal situation advanced inexorably. Martha was implacable. I went to visit him in jail only once, 3 months after the incident. He asked me through his public defender. I saw him through bulletproof glass. He was unrecognizable. He had lost weight, shaved his head, and had that look of a cornered animal that prisoners get. "Evelyn. Miss Evelyn," he said through the intercom with a trembling voice. "Please drop the charges. I learned my lesson. They're going to kill me in here. I swear I'll go far away. I'll sign whatever you want." I looked at him and felt no hate, not even pity. I felt indifference. It was like looking at an old piece of furniture you already threw in the trash. "I didn't come to negotiate, Jason," I said. "I came to bring you this." I pressed a document against the glass. "Divorce papers. Emily signed them yesterday," I explained, "voluntarily, without me asking. She requested full custody of Leo, and since you're going to be in here for 7 or 8 years for attempted kidnapping, the judge is going to grant it without hesitation." Jason hit the glass, furious. "She can't do this to me. She loves me. She's useless without me." "That's where you're wrong, Jason. She was useless with you. With you, she was nothing more than an ornament. Now she is learning to be a woman." "You're a witch!" he screamed, spitting saliva against the glass. "You ruined my life!" "You ruined your life all by yourself, boy. You wanted to play in the big leagues with other people's money and borrowed talent. And when you were discovered, you tried to bite the hand that fed you. Enjoy your stay." I hung up the phone and walked away. I left that gray prison and walked into the sunlight, knowing that door was closed forever. The cancer had been excised from our family. 6 months passed, then 8. Emily stayed at the bakery. She wasn't in cleaning anymore. She had ascended to logistics supervisor. It turned out she had a natural talent for organization and dealing with suppliers. Her strong character, the one she used to treat waiters badly, she now used to negotiate better flour prices and ensure drivers completed their routes. But the biggest change wasn't professional, it was personal. She moved out of the mansion. She told me herself one afternoon drinking coffee in my kitchen. She now came to visit me every day after work and brought Leo. "Mom, the house is too big," she told me, while feeding the baby applesauce, "and too expensive to maintain, even if you don't charge me rent. I feel empty there, too many memories of a fake life." "And what do you want to do?" I asked. "I found an apartment near the bakery. It's small, 2 bedrooms, but it's nice, and I can pay for it with my salary, with my money." I got up and kissed her forehead. A loud, tight kiss. "I am proud of you, daughter." She looked at me, and I saw tears in her eyes. "Forgive me, Mom," she whispered. "Forgive me for everything. For the baptism, for leaving you out, for being so blind. You are already forgiven, my life. Forgiveness is earned with deeds, not words. And you have earned it the hard way." Leo's first birthday arrived. 1-year-old. It seemed like a century had passed since that disastrous baptism. This time, the party wasn't at the Crystal Gardens. It was in my backyard. There weren't 150 guests, there were 40. My lionesses were there, Teresa, Martha, Sophia. Big Mike and his wife were there, some of Emily's co-workers from the bakery, and a few cousins who were actually worth the trouble. There was no 5-course banquet or influencers. There was a delicious barbecue, cold beer, lemonade, and of course, an immense cake baked by Big Mike and decorated by Emily herself. I was sitting in my garden chair watching my grandson try to smash his smash cake. Leo laughed out loud. Emily laughed with him, stained with frosting, hair down, wearing a simple floral dress that made her look 10 years younger and 1,000 times more beautiful than that day at the church. Suddenly, Emily asked for silence. She took a glass and tapped it gently with a spoon. I want to say a few words," she said, a bit nervous. Everyone went quiet. Emily looked for me in the crowd. "A year ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life," she started, voice clear. "I excluded the most important person in this world. I told her there was no room for her. I thought room was measured in seats, in elegant tables, in status." She paused to take a breath. No one said anything. You could only hear the wind in the trees. But this year, I learned that a mother's place isn't in a chair. A mother's place is in the foundation. My mother, Evelyn, didn't just give me life. She saved it. She taught me that when you fall, you don't stay down waiting to be picked up. You get up yourself. She taught me that money comes and goes, but dignity is not negotiable. Emily walked toward me. I felt a lump in my throat the size of a walnut. "Mom," she said in front of everyone, "you built the floor I walk on. You built the roof that covers us. And as long as I have life, there will always be room for you at my table, in my house, and in my heart. You are the guest of honor of my life." I stood up, leaning on my cane, and we hugged. It was a long, strong hug, a hug that welded all the cracks our love had suffered. I heard my friends applauding. I saw Big Mike wiping a tear with his apron. Leo crawled over to us and grabbed my legs, asking to be picked up. We picked him up well. Emily helped me, and the three of us stood there in the middle of the garden, 3 generations. I looked at the sky. It was blue, clean. I thought of Robert. "Look, Bob," I said in my mind. "We did it. We didn't lose her." We straightened the tree. The party went on until late. There was music, real laughter, no posed photos for Instagram, but moments engraved on the soul. At the end of the night, when everyone left, and I helped Emily clean up the plates because now she didn't allow me to do everything alone, I sat for a moment on the porch. I took out my cell phone, opened the banking app, and looked at the trust balance. It was intact and growing, but then I looked at the wallpaper photo. A selfie we had taken that afternoon, Emily, Leo, and me, with noses stained with frosting. That was my true fortune. I had started this story feeling invisible, rejected, old. "There's no room for you." That phrase could have destroyed me. It could have sent me to a corner to await death with bitterness. But instead, I used that phrase as fuel. I demonstrated that age is not a sentence, it is a rank, that we older women are not disposable, we are the architects of survival. We have the map, we have the keys, and if provoked, we have the power to close and open the doors as we please. Now, every morning, when I enter my bakery and see my daughter leading the team, when I see my grandson growing up safe and loved, I know my legacy is safe. I didn't just recover my place, I redefined my kingdom. I am Evelyn. I am 69 years old, and if anyone ever tells me again that there is no room for me, I will smile and say, "Careful, child. The world is mine. I'm just lending it to you." And that, my dears, is the sweetest truth of all, sweeter than the best fresh-baked bread.